everyone. Thanks for being here today with us for Four Authors in a Mystery. Today is our fourth video, and this time we've got something a little bit different for you. I'm Laurèn Lee, author of When Houses Burn.
I'm Kiersten Modglin, author of The Good Neighbors.
I'm Emerald O'Brien, author of the Knox and Shepherd Mystery Series.
I'm Rachel Renee, author of the Savannah PD series.
First off, I'd like to thank everyone who watched our last video, video number 3 in the series, and those who liked, commented, shared, or subscribed to our channel. The winner of a paperback copy of Little Girl Lost is Maite from Cocoa Beach, Florida. So thank you, Maite, for engaging with us.
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
If you stick around to the end of the video, there will be another giveaway.
Okay, so as Laurèn mentioned, this video is going to be a little bit different in that this will be the first time that we are discussing an author's books. And one author who the four of us really have enjoyed is Gillian Flynn. She has great twists, great suspense. I know some of us have taken inspiration from her work. I know all of us have enjoyed her work. So we are thrilled to be able to talk to you today about her stories, her books, and also some of the adaptations as well, because they've all had movie or TV adaptations. So the books that we're going to be discussing are
Gone Girl, which of course has the main character of the amazing Amy Dunn.
Dark Places, with the main character of Libby Day.
And Sharp Objects with the main character as Camille Preaker.
So for me, the biggest similarity and the reason that I really relate to and love her books so much is that all of her books are about flawed female characters. They all, just kind of center around that. I remember reading an article by Flynn a while back, and she really talked about that she likes to write women that aren't perfect. They aren't necessarily just the victim in this story. She likes them to have that dark side and to be evil sometimes. And I really like that side of her books and getting to see the way that she writes women, because it's pretty different than I think most books that I've read prior to reading hers.
Kiersten, I actually have that quote, and it's where she says, so writing on her website, she concedes that hers is not a particularly flattering portrait of women, but that's fine by me. Isn't it time to acknowledge the ugly side? I've grown quite weary of the spunky heroines, brave rape victims, soul-searching fashionistas that stalk so many books. I particularly mourn the lack of female villains.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That goes right with that. Exactly.
Yeah. Glad you had that, because I didn't even think to look it up, but I was like, I love that quote, and I just love her books because of that.
I had remembered hearing it too, so I just wanted to have it on standby.
Yeah.
Mine was kind of the same. I mean,
on my notes I wrote flawed for every character.
And yeah, usually men are the villains, and it's nice to, not nice to see, but it's fun to see that there are women out there who are also villainous.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it shows a side of the other side of women that, like you said, fiction doesn't often touch on, and then in our real world, people don't like to either admit that women have some of the same dark feelings, dark thoughts, have that depth, complexity, and darkness to them, because that's not really what society wants or expects of women, or hasn't been.
Yeah.
Other similarities that I noted were, and also about the flawed female protagonist. I like that because it's kind of like, if a character isn't flawed in some way, is it really realistic, right? And then also to bring that to another level, because we could say they're all deeply flawed because they all have like they've all gone through things. So some of the themes that are underlying similarities for me were family dysfunction, abuse, emotional, psychological, physical, and drug abuse, and then trust of others and self. And then also they all have a really, what I've noticed is like a really supportive secondary character.
Yeah.
And that kind of like bounces off because the female protagonist is both the protagonist and antagonist, sometimes to others, sometimes just to herself, right? So it's cool to have, I love some of the supporting characters that are very supportive. And then also, obviously, the twists that we all love. So
Yeah.
I mean, everyone touched upon exactly what I was feeling too, that they're all flawed, they've all survived some kind of trauma, and that's really how life is. You know, life isn't cookie cutter, not everyone even has a happy ending. That's one thing I noticed from some of those books, you know, especially Sharp Objects and Gone Girl, that, you know, there's not a the ends, you know, cross your T's and dot your I's, happy ending. So I really like that too.
yes, for sure. I know I put in a note that exactly at the end, there's no like cut and dry good or bad.
Yeah.
Like no one is like spoilers, no one is completely absolved, you know what I mean, really. And to some extent, which I know like we're going to talk about trauma and coping and that kind of thing, but yeah, no one really heals too much either, usually, you know, at least not in the book. Just like Laurèn said about the ending, you know, it's not a tied in a bow and all happy. So that's interesting too, an interesting similarity.
So, you know, Emerald kind of talked about this a lot. All of the characters have been through just about some form of abuse. So, like in Sharp Objects with Camille's, you know, self-harm, like that's how she has always dealt with the trauma that she experienced. Obviously, in Gone Girl, Amy deals with it in a lot of crazy ways. You know, I mean, just deals with, I mean, she runs off and fakes her own death. Like you know, she
to torture and
act herself. Like, yeah.
Like, revenge is kind of her.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, like the revenge and the like making someone else suffer is kind of how she like survives the day, basically, just to make other people like suffer, like, you know. And then I don't really remember like Dark Places. I mean, I think that Libby.
Yeah, she was all kleptomania.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what she did. Yeah, so I mean, I think
Also,
that.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry. She also just didn't like go out or like move on with life. She didn't work, all those kinds of things. So like her kind of coping in a kind of depression / she says she's choosing it, but you know, I think it's like not doing things is how she copes instead of like the bad things she does, except for stealing.
Yeah. She like kind of regressed from her life and is just like a shell of who she was. And so I think they all had their different ways of coping, and they all dealt with, you know, trauma in different ways. And yeah, I think, you know, the whole them being flawed, like that goes into how they cope. None of them are perfect. None of them, you know, went out and fixed their lives and got better and, you know, got jobs and were great members of society. And who cares what they dealt with? You know, they dealt with it in real human ways that I think most people are really familiar with. You know, tomorrow's not gonna be a better day necessarily. It's still gonna be dark for a while. We have a lot to deal with, and I think that's just one of the things that you know, her books really resonate with a lot of people because they are so real.
And even to the point where like sometimes the end is so much darker than the beginning. Because like there's so the mystery has been solved. Sometimes a couple times, like in the case of Sharp Objects. So they think and then it's actually solved. Well, yes, they know for the mom, but then it actually goes to the sister as well. So But I'm like whispering the spoilers because like I feel bad about saying them. But yeah, so sometimes the end is really darker than the beginning. Like things get worse than when they ever were because the truth is known and then having to live with that truth, you know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think Gone Girls, the ending was one of the best, like what you're saying, you know, the mystery was solved and then it like went so much darker. I love that ending. But
It makes me laugh, honestly. Like, especially if you watch the movie. I mean, the two of them just have tortured each other through the entire thing. And then at the end, like, it's like, all right, sorry, y'all gonna have to live with this now. You know, you've made your bed, now you're gonna lie in it together.
I hated that they left, like, I hated the ending of the movie compared to the ending of the book, though.
True.
Because I loved, like, the story of, like, his book being written about her. And, like, I hated that they left that out of the movie. I don't know. I thought that was just, like, the best revenge he could have gotten. You know, I mean, he was obviously stuck with her, but writing that was, like, his little piece of revenge.
Revenge, yeah.
So Sharp Objects is my favorite of Flynn's books. And I really love how Camille is so flawed and she copes with a lot of drinking and drug use. And it's kind of crazy the parts where that spills over to Amma coping with her the same way and the little adventures they get into that are sometimes crossing a lot of lines with the drug use. And I like how that spilled over into the TV adaptation of Sharp Objects too. You see her drinking a lot and there's a lot of drug use. So I feel like that just adds to the idea that not everyone is perfect and people deal with things in a lot of different ways, sometimes very unhealthy. But I feel like she did that very well. I feel like Flynn wrote that well. I feel like it was transferred over to the adaptation really well, that she was a flawed character and she had a lot of different ways of coping too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been years. I'm pretty sure I read that one as soon as it came out. So,
well, I read Gone Girl like when it came out, and then I went back and read her other two because the other two came first, and I'd never heard of her until Gone Girl. And so, yeah, it's been equally long for me. Like when those came out was when I read it. So,
yeah, I remember when Gone Girl was super popular. You know, I wanted to jump on the bandwagon and read that too. And I was going to get it from the library, and there were 60 people ahead of me to get the book. So I was like, I'm just going to go out and buy it. There's no way I can wait that long. And yeah, I really wanted to read it because of all the hype around it.
Yeah, I remember like I had seen it and because it was being filmed like not far from where I live. Like part of it was filmed in like Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which is like an hour from me. And so
cool.
Yeah, so people were talking about it. It was really like big around this area. But I never read it then. And then when it came to theaters, I'm like one that I always have to read the book first. So I bought it and read it in like 2 days before it came out in theaters, and then we went and saw it. For me, Gone Girl is my favorite. I love all of her books, but Gone Girl to me just had that twist where I can like vividly remember reading that book and getting to the part where like you realized what was going on, like where like the next chapter is from Amy's point of view, and I was like, what? Like it took me I just remember that like mind blown.
I remember seeing that in the movie theater. I think I went with my boyfriend and maybe some friends, and none of them had read it before, and I did. So I knew what the twist was, and I just remember like looking over to them, like right when the movie was going to show the twist. I just like wanted to see their reaction because I knew it was just going to like blow their minds and just be so crazy. So that's still probably to this day one of the biggest twists I feel like I've read. And that's definitely inspired me too, to try to just think of what's the craziest thing I can write and how can I execute that in my books.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say that and remember that because I did the same thing. I had read the book first and we went to see the movie and I knew it was happening. And I look over to Michael and I'm like, just waiting to see. Yeah. And the shocked look that I had when I was reading.
I did the same thing with my Michael. I was like, I just wanted to see.
The oohs and ahs, like, oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, like the whole theater, I think, at once gasped.
Yeah.
I think I watched it on my own, but I had watched it after I read the book. And yeah, like the book is Okay, so I know that the movie is my favorite adaptation of her stories. And it was just so cool. I always love in any adaptation to see like what parts from the book were used. And I felt like even the parts that didn't get little parts that didn't get explored or the way that they did it, it just still really represented the book so well, which I think is why it's my favorite like movie like adaptation. Yeah. It was just done really well.
Well, my favorite of her books, like I mentioned, is Sharp Objects. I've read it, I think, 2 or 3 times now, and I don't know, it's just so good. It just like sucks me in. It's super dark and twisted. So anytime I recommend it to someone, I always have to preface it by saying, just so you know, it's really bleeped up. So they don't read it and then go, what did you tell me to read? So that's definitely my favorite. Every time I read it, I feel like I am reading it for the first time over again. And just the way she writes is just so dark and immersing. And that book has definitely inspired me in a lot of my writing. And I just really hope that she writes something else again soon. I've been patiently waiting for, I don't know how many years now for her to write something else that good. But yeah, Sharp Objects is definitely my favorite, but also Gone Girl is my favorite adaptation.
I agree. Yeah, Gone Girl is my favorite adaptation, but actually Dark Places is probably my favorite book. I read it, and then we were going on a road trip shortly after, and I got the audio from the library, so we could listen to it in the car. So I've read it once, I've listened to it, and then I watched the adaptation, and I don't know what it is about it. Libby's character, like you hate her. You don't really love her character because she's like, she doesn't grow from what has happened to her. She just kind of stays in that childlike state for so long. And it takes her, like, I feel like most of the book and adaptation to grow or to even see that there are other possibilities out there. And she keeps like that hidden, what she knows, whether it's a coping mechanism to keep it hidden, or she just doesn't want to go back on what she originally accused her brother of doing. So yeah, I don't know. That's probably my favorite book. But adaptation wise, I like Gone Girl. I don't know, the movie just, they did so well with it.
Yeah.
I think Dark Places was probably for me the darkest one. And then for the book, so I really liked it for that. Sharp Objects, it might be my favorite book. I think that one was really twisty too. Like to me, that was just as twisty as Gone Girl. But it just happened more towards the end, you know what I mean? Instead of like all the way through. And then Gone Girl for me was the most like suspenseful and gripping. But then also I feel like as we're talking about these protagonists, I had a harder time relating to Amy, even though a lot of the things that she was saying, I did, like not a lot actually, but some of the things that she said, I thought I was really in agreement with. For the other two, for Camille and Libby, I feel like they had triggers more, like they had more trauma that they had gone through. And so, you know, like it said that when you go through trauma, you could like, that's kind of the age you stay at and you don't like develop further, you know what I mean, until you are able to heal. So I think I was just able to maybe feel for the other characters more than Amy.
Yeah.
So I think that probably makes it where Dark Places and Sharp Objects might have been my favorite books, but yeah.
I think with the whole Amy thing, like her parents, you know, writing her into these books and making her seem so, you know, perfect with these books, like it kind of made her feel bad about herself.
Right.
So, you know, she, I can't really relate to it, but I can kind of see like that's how she ended up the way she did, because she had these people who, if she did something wrong, they made it right by, writing it into a book and making her seem better than she is. So then she always kind of felt less than.
Right.
Yeah. And that's
Yes.
important because of all the protagonists, she has the least amount of trauma, which does make her the least sympathetic because, I mean, compared to, Camille and Libby, like she had a great life, So, I mean, seeing why she is the way that she is and because of the books and because of how her parents raised her, like, I think that's an underlying theme in a lot of mysteries is like how badly like your parents can mess you up or your family and your childhood can mess you up. And
Right.
it was neat to see because I mean, like I said, that was her third book, so it was neat to see like a different way of like introducing trauma. Like it wasn't such a big trauma like her other two books, but it still really messed up the character.
Right. And it like her family was affluent, like there wasn't the struggle there that there may have been with the other characters, the struggle for very much at all, really, like not struggle for attention between siblings, not the literal tragedy of your family like being killed. But it also shows how like your class kind of doesn't matter when it comes to mental health, and how you can still get super depressed over like you were saying, how her parents kind of treated her and how she grew up and everything. And then you add little triggers to that, like an affair or just like things, losing jobs and all those kinds of things. And it really can build on those like mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. And can I just say that the casting on all of the adaptations have been like spot on.
Yeah.
Like they did such a good job of every single person that they cast. I've never, usually when they like adapt books or movies from books, I'm like, oh, I can't believe this is who they picked, And I did not have a single complaint for any of those books to movies. The last thing that we're going to discuss about Flynn's books is a theme from the books that we enjoyed exploring or that we love to explore in our own work. So for me, I've kind of talked about this in other, videos that we've made, but my like biggest thing that I like to explore in my books is marriages. The trust in marriages, the secrets that can be kept. And so, like I said, when I was writing my first book was when I read Gone Girl, and I loved seeing like all of the dark, twisted things that came out of that marriage, and that's been my favorite thing to explore with my own writing is just everything that can go wrong in a marriage and where it all goes wrong, the point that it turns from this loving relationship to like something dark.
One of the themes that I try to incorporate in all my writing that I feel like Gillian Flynn does really well, like we've discussed, is the flawed character. So probably all of my characters, if not, almost all of them, are all very flawed because, life is messy. Not everyone is perfect. Not everyone has perfect life, perfect childhood. So I really like to make flawed characters that may not be so relatable as a whole, but people and readers can hopefully draw parts of their character and be like, I understand that. I went through something like that too. So definitely the flawed character is something that I learned from Flynn and her books. And also just the crazy twist at the end or in the beginning of the books, middle of the books. That's something I really try to incorporate in my work because I know as a reader, I enjoyed those twists so much that, maybe someday I can, someone will read one of my books and they'll be like, oh, and feel that like giant sense of just like awe that I have felt while reading Gillian Flynn's books.
I think I've explored many different things in my different books. Like the family thing, I think in most of my books, there's some sort of relationship problem that happens. And like my Savannah PD series, it focuses more on the mystery and the crime, but there's always some underlying strife that is happening between, my characters and either someone that they work with or a family member or relationships. And so I think I like to explore those things in my own books. And I try to add the twists in. And it's always fun, when I get a couple of readers who say, "Oh, I didn't see that coming," and I always go back to, I'm working towards that. That's one of the things that I like to try and do in my books, just to shock the reader, or make them say that I didn't see that coming, or I had no idea. I feel like with each one of my books, I get a little bit better with that. And then also the trust. So going also back to that, a little bit more in more recent books, I explore that, the trust within marriages mainly, and that maybe not a spouse, but that kind of relationship, just gaining that trust and keeping that trust, and what makes you decide not to trust somebody with something, or to trust them with something.
So for me, some of the themes that Flynn explores that I also do are those family dynamics, different family dynamics, dysfunctional especially. And then I think maybe one of the key shared themes that we have is that does go to the flawed female protagonist, is the kind of inner dialogue of my main characters of trust for others and trust of self. And I read a while ago. Actually, I think it's one of the things that sparked me for my first book, which was if we trust ourselves a lot, whether or not other people let us down doesn't matter as much. So the more like healthy, stable, all those things that you are, the disruption and dysfunction around you will not cause as much conflict, because you're stable in yourself and you trust yourself. So I feel like for maybe all of my books, I've kind of, unlike Flynn, I've kind of tried to have one of the misbeliefs that are broken or the lessons that are learned, to trust oneself more, and to learn more about yourself, and take those lessons, and instead of having them like weigh you down of betrayal or anything like that, to just learn from it, bring it to your future, apply that to your new relationships, you know what I mean, or current ones. So I feel like that's like a lesson in my books, but it is taken from that initial theme of lack of trust of others and oneself. And then also, I love her themes that are basically like, most people are bound by lies of others. So they're bound by the lies of their past that they grew up like thinking, you know what I mean? Or the lies that a spouse has told them, or that, they're working from a point that's not truth. And I think that really everyone can relate to that. Who really is working with 100% truth, some point in your life growing up, or how you are now in relationships. So I just think that's awesome to think that, like, in her novels, truth is usually the breaking point. And then I like that, as we've said, things don't really get better, but like, you can't expect someone who's had such trauma, who hasn't been able to heal, to be making better decisions in the future. And so I kind of, actually, All the Dark Corners are one of our Crimson Falls novellas. That's one of the biggest ones that I kind of like was inspired by her books, and maybe the first time that I really was. So those themes really ring true to my stories.
When I was reading that book for you, I remember telling you I got like Sharp Objects vibes, I think.
Yeah.
A story. So I can see her influence in that one a lot.
Yeah, it was the first one that I didn't like. The character didn't really get fixed. There was truth, but it's, so I like that. That is so true to life, as Laurèn was saying, of what she really loves in an ending. So not all or most of mine are like that, but I've kind of taken that as something it's kind of like given me permission to let reality lie in the end, Okay, guys, so it's time for the next giveaway, which is from me. And I'm kind of following in Laurèn's footsteps there. Her giveaway was her paperback of her Crimson Falls novella. I also wrote a novella in the Crimson Falls, yep, the Crimson Falls kind of series called All the Dark Corners. And so I'm giving away a signed paperback of this book. And to enter, if you could comment below and just let us know that you're subscribed to our channel. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe and hit the little notification bell below, and comment below and just let us know that you're subscribed. So that's one entry. And then another entry would be to, in the description, we have our social media links. If you go to any one of our Facebook pages, we'll have uploaded this to share the video. And if you could tag a friend in it who you think would enjoy, that would be awesome. We welcome new viewers. We hope you really enjoyed it. If you know someone who loves Gillian Flynn's novels, especially, they're gonna probably want to watch this this discussion, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the discussion in the comments below as well. But yeah, so tagging a friend on any of our on our Facebook posts, and then just commenting below that you're subscribed, and then you're entered. And I'll announce the winner in episode 5.
All right. Thank you all for watching this, our 4th episode of 4 Authors in a Mystery. Make sure that you are commenting below if you want a chance at winning another 4 Authors in a Mystery book. Make sure you subscribe and like our video, and follow us on our social media to keep up to date. And also stay tuned for next month and our special Halloween edition of 4 Authors in a Mystery.